Hi, everyone. I am Kelly, and this is Vote Her In. Vote Her In is a collaboration between Two Broads Talking Politics and Rebecca Sive, who is the author of Vote Her In, Your Guide to Electing Our First Woman President. So I am going to turn it over to Rebecca now to introduce a returning Vote Her In guest that we're so excited about. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Kelly, and I couldn't be happy that our guest tonight is returning. She is Anna Valencia, presently Chicago City Clerk. We'll talk more about what that job entails. And she's also at the moment running in the Democratic primary for Illinois Secretary of State. And as you, as faithful listeners, may know, we are always very interested in women in executive office. And Anna is both holding an executive office, running for an executive office, and among the many important political jobs she had before she was clerk, she was a legislative director in City Hall for Mayor Emanuel. So she's got lots of insights on that front, and also on what it's like to build a career to the grand old age of mid-30s and to be in this place. So I will just say one more thing about Anna and her thoughtfulness. One of the things I recommend to you, in addition to looking at the links we've shared on the Two Broads website, is when I was writing Voter In, I wanted to talk to three women who had significant executive experience and could talk about, what it looked like when the buck stops here, right, as it would with a woman president. And Anna was one of those people, along with our then Attorney General and our state's attorney in Illinois, in Chicago. So I know you'll want to learn as much as you can about Anna after we talk, and so that's one place to go. So I'll start with the first question, Anna, and I thought that, what we should do is really talk with you about how you shaped this career of yours and put yourself in the position to run a strong race. You're getting good reviews, as I've seen, and I know Kelly has too, on your campaign for Secretary of State. So maybe you could just kind of walk us through how you shaped the career, how you focused on executive office, and why you went that way. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Rebecca, Kelly. I appreciate it. And one new title that I forgot to add that we have to add is mom. So I'm the
Yes.
new mom, pandemic mom. We had our little girl, Rihanna, in last April. So she's now a little over a year. And that is something else I've added to not only executive office holder, but mom, which is, I guess, another executive office as it is. But no, really to kind of understand, I guess, my why, where I start always is my North Star and my story. All of us have stories and, why you decide public service. For me, it started really where I grew up. I grew up in Southern Illinois in Granite City, the Metro East, and my dad and mom still live there, lived in the same house for 40 years. My dad proudly stripes our streets. He's a union painter, has been my whole life. And my mom worked at a nonprofit with alternative high school students and teaching teen reach in our two middle schools. And she made just $25,000 a year. They had three kids. And for my sister and I, my brother decided to go in the trades. My sister and I both went to college. So I was first in my family to go to college on scholarships and grants at U of I. And I share that because, my parents, we all kind of start at a different starting point in life. But I really believe that government can be that great equalizer that allows you to be at a different finishing point to allow me to be here as City Clerk of Chicago, this girl from Granite, and now even running statewide office that's never been held by a woman, let alone a woman of color or a mom or a millennial. It'll be the first time in our state's history as Secretary of State that we would have a Latina, a mom, a millennial, and a woman, which is very exciting. So really my story is not possible without my parents and about those roots and values they instilled in me of public service and always helping even when you didn't have a lot to give, but just showing up and being there for family and community. And then also the opportunities that government allowed me to do, whether it was financial aid or scholarships or internship programs or a job shadow program to Springfield or a trip to DC as a high school student that really opened my eyes to what it could be to be in government. And I remember a job shadow program I went to in Springfield, and Evelyn Bowles at the time was a state senator in my area. And she was tough as nails. And she took me all around the Senate floor. And then Governor Ryan, she barged into his office and wanted me to take a photo with him, which I don't think I should probably have that photo out these days. But she was great. And she took her time to really encourage us as these two young girls from Granite City to think about politics and think about government and think about a woman's place there. But I really got an internship and as a college student working for a local judge's race. My dad was painting this lawyer's home and talking to the wife and took up a conversation, said my daughter's interested in politics. And that's, I think she asked her husband to hire me that summer. But I loved it, being out at parades and going door to door and helping with fundraisers. I didn't know that was even a career. I didn't even know that was an option. And so that's really kind of how I got my start, and moving to Virginia to work in going door to door 7 days a week, living in supporter housing. My dad thinking I was throwing my life away because I had a college degree and doing this instead. But it's worked out. And along my career path, as I moved kind of up in different positions, I just noticed that there are less women around the table of decision making, definitely less women of color. And I felt this pull and need to do more and to continue to lean into what I was kind of putting together. And then once I did get to those positions, bring others with me, because that's what it's about, building a bench. So once I had the power to hire my own team, I searched and found women and talented women and women of color, and I invested in them my time and talent and energy of, how to approach this, how to ask for a raise, how to navigate sticky situations with elected officials, how to brief a principal, all these things that you need to know to be successful. And so really executive office or running for office was kind of not what I thought I'd be doing. But in 2016, the world changed for all of us. And I remember the day after, I remember being at Susana Mendoza, one statewide as comptroller. I remember being at her election night party, so excited. We elected a Latina, elected Tammy Duckworth that night. And then the world came crashing down as we saw Hillary lose. And here I thought, we were going to break that glass ceiling. I thought she's competent, experienced. How could anyone vote for that idiot? Who could? And he was not even competent or experienced, and let alone, just the things that he was saying. But so that changed something for me. And the next day when I went into city council, we were in budget season. It just felt like, a funeral we're walking into. Everyone was just crushed. And two things happened at that moment that changed, where my trajectory. One, Susanna won, there was an opening for city clerk. And two, I felt this deep sense of duty and responsibility to raise my hand. I had been pushing women and my friends to raise their hand and lean in and say yes, and I wasn't doing it myself. And so I asked for that appointment, and city council approved me 50-0. And 5 days after Donald Trump, I took the oath of office. And I not only took the oath of office, but I took a policy on which City Key, municipal ID card, which is going to help undocumented immigrants and homeless and reentry, total things that are opposite of what Donald Trump wanted. We were going to take that on without fear that we were going to help people no matter who was in the White House. And so that's really kind of what inspired me to raise my hand and sign up for this leadership position. And then it's been the best ride of my life so far.
So you're running now for Secretary of State, and that's one of these kind of positions that people don't always know what it means, what it would entail, what that job looks like, especially in Illinois. Can you talk some about what that position is and the kinds of things you hope to do if you're elected as Secretary of State?
So when I became city clerk, I had people say, "Why city clerk? What is it that you want to do there?" No one really knew what that job was either. But we had a really great moment to identify and ideate and innovate. And what I loved about being in an executive position is that you could just create. You didn't have to really go through city council a lot. You didn't have to deal with the legislature, not so much like the mayor or the governor has to. We could really just create and think of, not only think of how we could help people, but those issues came to us. So really what I loved is we started from like a grassroots bottom up way. we heard what the advocates wanted, what community organizations, what parents needed, and that's where it steered kind of our agenda. So it really wasn't ever Anna Valencia's agenda, it was the people's agenda. It's like, what is it that I can do here? Not only just in my own purview at the city clerk's office, I could do the city sticker and I could run city council meetings, but we used our platform to do so much more. We created the first ever women and girls working group, status women and girls working group, because at the time I was the only female citywide elected, and quite has changed in the positive way. But 2 years ago, it wasn't that way. And we had 120 women we brought together, and we decided to, save ourselves and create our own policies that were going to help close the gender gap and keep our young girls safe. And so we've done things on sexual health education, working with Dr. Janice Jackson at Chicago Public Schools, working with Juliana Stratton, Lieutenant Governor, and the Illinois State Police on how can we lower the backlog of sexual assault kits. And we had a young girls summit of 400 young girls that we had to do virtual, but we did things about knowing your rights and securing your future and really and mental health and really showing up for our young girls, especially during this pandemic of isolation and e-learning. And so I use this platform to do more than just, the operational piece. We led on fines and fees reform. So we had parents show up to my office and reporters saying that our city sticker tickets were putting people in debt. I met a bus driver on the west side of Chicago who had $5,000 in city sticker ticket debt. And the city told him he had to put half down in order to get on a payment plan. And when he didn't, they suspended his driver's license and he lost his job as a CTA bus driver to provide for his family of 5 in North London, which was wrong. And I remember taking up this issue and I said, I'm going to do something about it. And at the time, one of my mentors said, I'd be careful. This is Pandora's box. You don't know what you're going to get when you open it. But I couldn't just sit there and let this happen to people after they kept going to different elected and getting a no. I wanted to be a yes. And I wanted to be a resounding yes. And we've worked on that for 2.5 years. And we have changed the city's policies and we have changed the predatory practices together. And it was hard and it was tough. And I sweated through blazers in some of these meetings with parents and commissioners in the mayor's office, but we did it. We did it. And so these are the type of policies that I worked on. I remember a male colleague of mine, a city council member, said, Anna, I think you need to swim in your lane more. I was like, why? If I have the capacity to use this platform to do as much good as we can, we need to do that, not just during 9 to 5. We need to wake up every single day and ask ourselves, how can we use this power for good? How can we use this platform to be a change agent? And that's what I've really done. So this is the spirit that I want to take to the Secretary of State's office. Secretary White has done a phenomenal job. He's focused a lot on youth and making sure our youth have opportunities. He's focused on mobile services. He was very, progressive in the way he would actually go and print IDs on spot in community neighborhoods and making sure that our locations were in equitable neighborhoods, that they just weren't for some neighborhoods, but they were everywhere. And so that's what I really want to take with me is that equity lens and accessibility and modernizing the office to take it to new heights. So, that's what I'll be really focusing on. 3 pillars. So voting access, voting access, modernization, and equity. And access, when I talk about it, I talk a lot about voting access because some of the states around us we see are trying to take us back to the 1950s. And that is so important that we have people with shared lived experience like myself at the table saying, no way, you're not taking us back. Illinois can be the leader of voting access to the ballot. So day one, I'm calling on a commission, a collaborative, just like we did on the fines and fees work, where we have the General Assembly, the governor's office, we have Illinois State Board of Elections, we have the county clerks, we have community activists, we have, real people at the table talking about voting and making sure that we double down on vote by mail, that automatic voter registration is happening, that we are leading in the country on voting access. Hours, locations, all of these things. We need a complete audit and understanding and talking to each other about these policies. I want to create a civics core of high school students, community college students, everyone our young people to get them civically engaged. It's going to be a stipend program where they're going to be able to register their communities because they know and have the trust of their communities and neighbors and grandparents and cousins to get them registered to vote. And then we're going to teach them on how to be a community activist, how to organize, and then also if they want to be a government leader, they can see it and they know it. Oftentimes what I've seen in politics is that, people of color can't get these internships because they can't afford to take unpaid internships or volunteer on a campaign. I know for me, I couldn't afford to take something that was unpaid. I had a car payment and student loans and food and rent, all of these things. So we want to make sure that we're making this accessible for young and youth of color so they understand that government can be access, it can be a job, and you can make change inside. So those are some of the things I want to do. Modernize the library system. I grew up in my library in Granite City. If there was a free program, Debbie Valencia, my mother, took us there. And so every summer we were in the reading program, and that library was that opening to see the outside world. It was that exploration. But we know that all of our libraries aren't equitable. It's based on property taxes. So I know my library in Granite is not the same as the library in Wilmette. And so we've got to change that. We've got to make sure that as a chief librarian that we do an audit on equity lens of can we create a grants program that can, make that more fair and equitable so that our libraries have access to broadband and expand broadband. In McLean County in Southern Illinois, I heard from some folks there that said, the library was closed, families would pull into the parking lot for their broadband to download their kids' e-learning materials. So we know that the libraries were a hub that families needed to go to during the pandemic. So how do we double down on that in our rural communities and our south and west side of Chicago and the suburbs, anywhere? So I want to bring a grants program to not only do capital grants, but technology investments so that everyone can have a maker's lab, a digital lab, broadband, all the things that we need for our kids and our adults to be successful in this, 24th century. And then lastly, modernizing the office. No one likes to stand in lines with DMV. I've been hearing a lot about it. I've been getting emails about it and friends texting me photos. And I will say that the pandemic has really shown the need for technology investments and infrastructure that government was not ready for. My office was not ready for it. And so we've got to be real about that, about putting capital dollars into technology infrastructure and overhauling these archaic systems that are 20 years old. So then we can have, an app on your device where you can upload documents, you can pay online. You don't even have to make an appointment to go see us in person. You don't have to take a day off of work, find childcare, transportation, drive 30 miles out. Everything is done with a few clicks on your mobile device. And so that's all the other improvements we want to do in terms of DMV. Easy to register your business. And once you register your business, you're then taken over to a business affairs, small business center where they're telling you you can get grants or you can get, there's these type of opportunities for you. So there's a lot that we can do that's low hanging fruit that people don't know, that the Secretary of State really interacts with you. It really, can make your life a lot more seamless and easy. And so those are the type of projects that I really want to focus on, once I get there day one.
So, I was thinking about the library thing. I was like you. My mom took us to the library every week, right? I think Kelly would probably say the same thing, right? So, but going back a second to your phrase equity lens, which of course resonates, can you just share with us sort of a two-part question? One is, when you did the task force on women and girls in the clerk's office, are there particular recommendations that you want to highlight for our listeners that you feel are particularly important now and nationally? And related to that, well, maybe I'll wait for the second question, but if you could talk a little bit about that, because we're once again at a time when we're looking, I can't even believe it, at women deciding to run for office, developing policy agendas. What would you say to them about the policy recommendations you think are key?
So as we kind of come out of this post-pandemic world, we have to have an honest conversation about how we're going to support working moms and women that want to run for office, that want to get back in the workplace. I saw a staggering number that I heard. It was like 2 million women left the workforce in 2020,
Yes.
the highest since 1988, I believe. And so we have to ask ourselves now that we're in a position of power and change to do it, and we have 3 women leading City Hall, how are we going to support women coming back into the workforce? How are we going to allow them to thrive? So I think there's a few things we definitely have to talk about. Paid leave, paid leave, paid leave, paid leave. We've been talking about that at a level. I know they were very close to a bill in the state house here in Springfield, but we have to get serious about paid leave. And that's not only for helping women with young children, but helping people even take care of, family members. A lot of times it's on the woman to be the caretaker of their parents. I have a woman right now in FMLA who was the only child, her mother passed away and she had to take FMLA to go. But, FMLA only, you don't get paid on that. And we have another one, my chief of staff, a mom of 2 kids whose children are in CPS. And as we start to return to work, we had to tell our DHR department, okay, so what happens? You want us to come back to 5 days, by July, but her kids are in school or the park district and they have a COVID scare. Well, then who takes care of the kids? They're 8 and 9. Is she gonna have to take her vacation days, all her personal and sick time? That's wrong. We should not be doing that. There should be specific COVID time or paid leave or something that allows her to continue to not fear that her job's going to be taken away or retaliation for not being able to be there for her kids. And then as a society, do we really want kids being raised alone because their parents had no choice but to work or keep their kids at home alone? I mean, that's not a choice. So we have to have these real conversations right now about what matters to us as a society. And we don't have our kids have opportunities and mentorship programs and have places to go that are safe and family members to be able to be an active part of their life and their childhood and to be able to be there for big moments. We see what happens on the streets of Chicago, right? We see what's happening with violence when we don't have opportunities for our young people. We don't have jobs. We don't have a village there for them to support them. And so we've got to be real and have these real conversations about what it means. So I think paid leave, I think companies need to talk about flex time, allowing women to kind of choose their hours. I think that would really help people and working parents to be able to be at moments in their kids' life, but still be productive. And the pandemic showed that we could still be productive from home. We were still bringing in revenue at City Clerk's office. In fact, we were only $5 million away from the revenue that we brought in the year before during a pandemic. So we know that we can be productive. And then I think there's something interesting that we've been talking about, and State Rep Margaret Croak is leading on, is ensuring that women who run for office can use campaign funds for childcare. They're doing it in New York. They're actually doing it in Louisiana. A friend of mine's on the county board there, and she said, we're doing that in Louisiana already. I'm like, Louisiana? We're not doing it in Illinois. I mean, I am very lucky. I have a very great partner. We're 50-50, and he's very supportive and hands-on with our daughter. We have parents and help. But what about if you're a single parent and you want to run for office? And most of the things are at evening hours or weekends. And your traditional daycares aren't open. They're only open during the week, right? There's not always time for aftercare, and that ends at usually 6. And some of these forums start at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. So that really, cancels out a lot of women who may want to run for office. And so we've got to change the rules and make it, we're not asking for a handout, but a hand up or equal playing field, just an equal playing field. And then also in terms of women running for office, and I'm experiencing this now, I talk about it a lot, women of color, you have a hard time getting that momentum they need. I get a lot of questions about viability. I don't think men always get the viability question. And we need to, raise more money. We need to have these political endorsements early on to ensure that other people will support. And there was a Cook report in 2018 that showed that most women there's a pay gap in what they were raising funds for elected office, a $500,000 gap between what a white male was raising money for office and a female. Now take a woman of color and you're probably even more, or a young woman of color and you're probably even more of disparity. So we have to really understand how are we creating a fair, equal playing field for women to run for office and then show up back in this workplace and be able to get promoted and be in leadership positions. And so that's the conversation that I know has been having, people have been having post pandemic or as we kind of come out, but it still needs to happen. This conversation definitely needs to happen because we know these safety nets were not there and we've seen them exposed even more during the pandemic. And I just hope we have the courage to change it and we get more women in office who have lived it and understand it and know that we need these things to change.
So you were talking some about campaigns, the campaigns running in the state, things like that. You have also worked on national campaigns. You worked on U.S. Senator Dick Durbin's campaign. Can you talk some? We certainly have listeners who are interested in that sort of work and in, getting involved in that and then taking on more responsibility. What sort of advice do you have for especially women who are interested in that kind of work?
Yes, and I was all in for my girl Kamala Harris. We were early supporters. I was a very early supporter for her, and my husband was with Joe Biden. And even I'll come back to answer your question on that. But even when Kamala got out, and I was heartbroken, and I had a conversation with her because she just is so real, and she called actually to check in on me because she knew I was pregnant, and I asked her, I said, why did you get out? We were so pushing for you. And she said, there was just not a path there. And I knew, but I know that I made a difference. And she told me to keep going. Because I said, how do you not get discouraged when, we keep hitting these roadblocks and we can't, raise the money or compete. And she said, I'm not, because I know that every little girl who saw me out there have changed their trajectory. Like they now see that it's possible. And you have to keep going, Anna, because these little girls are looking up to you to know that's possible. And so that is something that has motivated me running for Secretary of State, because I know just me being where I am and getting up on those forums and getting up on those debate stages are going to change what young girls think they're capable of, change what young Latinas and young women of color and young girls of color are capable and thinking of where they belong. And so I wanted just to share. I haven't shared that really with anyone, and I just thought it was really good for this venue here of women listening, of knowing that you belong and knowing that even when it gets hard and tough, and the days you want to quit, knowing that your sheer presence and just moving on is making a difference, even when you don't see it or feel it. And I think that's the question I have, or the answer to that question you said about Senator Durbin's campaign. I was 28 years old. I was terrified to run this $10 million campaign for U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, the number 2 in the Senate. I had never ran a campaign this large or statewide, and I was terrified. But I had some really great consultants and people who kind of saw that maybe nervousness and said, "Hey, Anna, how can I help you?" And I didn't have the ego or the pride to say, "I know what I'm doing," and just fake it till you make it, because that is great, but it only can take you so far. I said, I do. I need some help, and I sought out some mentorship. I asked questions. I taught myself, and then that person helped. That person didn't go and say, "Oh, I didn't take credit for it." He was a very nice ally, and and then once I got that confidence to lead, it kind of all fell in place. And I was always prepared. I was always organized. I asked a lot of questions, and I didn't feel bad for asking questions. I think some people feel like they know it all, but it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to seek mentorship. It's okay to check the ego and say, I don't know. Now, I would never say that in front of my principal and Senator Durbin, because he was looking for me to be confident in my answer, even if I wasn't sure if I was confident. And then I also would find my little kind of kitchen cabinet to run ideas by, to ask for, run things by them, to practice on. To this day, I still will do some prep and practice and make sure I'm going in prepared. And so that I'm not, wasting anyone's time or my own, that I'm coming, fully prepared and ready, because you only get one shot sometimes with these people and these opportunities. And so you got to come your A game. And there's no speech I've ever given that I haven't practiced for 2 weeks or 10 times and read over and over and over again to really feel like it's my own and embed it. I want to make sure that anyone who comes to hear something I have to say or is going to maybe be part of a collaborative or anything, that they're getting 100% of my best. And so that's two things I would say that I always tell people is, one, to be kind, always be kind and be yourself, because you never know who's going to be sitting at the other side of the table one day from you. And you never want to burn bridges, especially in politics. So always, be kind. And then the second thing is, once you get to a place of power, remember how you got there. Don't ever forget the community that got you there, and always take people along with you. And that is my legacy. When I look back at my life and look back at what I'm most proud of, it's going to be the Kyras and Shakiras and Arianas, and it's going to be the women that I've helped mentor or help get to somewhere, that really has made my life full, because I know that it wasn't just about me, but it was about all of us moving into spaces and places that we didn't exist before and that we took on. And so that's really what my legacy has been so far, and I want it to continue to be.
So we've touched on a lot of topics, and we want to respect your time and have you be able to go in and kiss your baby once more this evening. So thanks so much for being here this evening and for sharing your wisdom and your thoughts and your plans. And I hope that you'll come back and share some more at a future date. But in the meanwhile, thanks so much and have a good evening.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this platform. And I'm hoping I will be here after the primary and we win and we're celebrating and we're talking about the bumps and bruises and victories of the election. And, I'm hoping for this historic win with all of you and taking you along for the journey.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Hannah.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone.